Hello and welcome to Week 5 postgame against the San Francisco 49ers. Man, it's digesting what happened last night. Aaron James and myself are recording this on Monday morning. Gave us a night to digest kind of what happened, what went wrong. I think when you look at it, I don't know if you could take any positives from last night, right? It was, I think our show is going to be mostly the good, the bad, the worst, and the ugliest, really, after what went down last night. So let me bring in my esteemed co-host to discuss what went wrong, Mr. Aaron James. Aaron, how are you today, sir? After a night to really go through, we watched it together over a friend's house to digest that performance. What are your initial thoughts this morning?
This picture displays it all. We have a primetime game. We're going to this magnificent event. The best, most look forward to game probably of the year. Sunday Night Football rivalry. And we got Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn as the head coaches behind me showing up to this primetime game. Now, I mentioned to you that the episode for this podcast should be our pets' heads are falling off because it ain't pretty out there. We looked horrible and miserable. So we have, a lot of comments throughout the game, a lot of opportunities to create momentum, especially, more so in the first half, obviously. But, let's kind of dive in and share, just go over the game, share some comments, some key plays, some missed opportunities. So I'm gonna bring it in here. Now Niners start with the ball, which I was happy with because you don't let their defense set the tone early on with the fans. So.
Oh, I agree. I think to me, I've always been a proponent of taking the ball in the second half. But the one issue I think we saw with this, and I think we've talked about this before. Dallas is a very much play from ahead offense or defense, and this defense, they did not seem to have an answer for that 49er offense. The one thing I will say is we shut down McCaffrey pretty well. I don't think he didn't have his typical game, right? He only averaged 2.7 yards a carry. He had 19 attempts, 51 yards, so it worked against him. But the guy that you said you weren't super worried about, somebody that I thought people could be mistaken. He only had 3 catches, but those 3 catches went for 3 touchdowns, baby. And that's we just see it right here, George Kittle. They did not seem to have an answer for him. And it seemed like in the big moments when they wanted the touchdown, that's who they were going to. And most of them, he seemed pretty wide open on all of those attempts. And then, the problem with, kicking off first is now San Fran goes down and sets the tone and gives that touchdown. 7 plays to score 70 yards. And then Dallas comes out and they right away go 3 and out. So that, to me, set the tone for that game early, that San Fran really felt like they were doing what they wanted early on, and Dallas just couldn't move the ball. I think it was like, how far through that first half did we not get a first down?
I think it was into the second quarter, midway through, or we got our first down of the game. Now, also, big play by our defense here, 3rd and 15. So we kind of get the momentum back. Let me pause here because now it's starting to really move on us. So 3rd and 15, we got a big play, big loss that our defense caused, put them out of field goal position, and so now they're forced to punt it with us. So now, 0-7, take a deep breath. Our defense came up with something big, and then lo and behold, you have this uncharacteristic of Tony Pollard, but man, Fred Warner, this guy's a beast. How this ball was not touched by someone.
How it didn't bounce out of bounds either.
Yeah. It shimmied off the leg of one of the defenders, but then look, our defense shows up again. As Jordan Lewis is getting ran over truck stick, he reaches in and pulls the ball from McCaffrey.
That was such a big play because I'm watching that and I was like, man, my boy's getting run over here. Like they're about to. I felt like they were getting close, and they were driving, and then he's running over Lewis, but Lewis makes the play. So it was very impressive. After that first drive, their defense kind of held up for Dallas. And like you said, so after that first drive, the issue is the first 4 drives for Dallas, 3 yards punt, 3 plays, 1 yard punt, 3 plays, 1 yard punt, 1 play fumble, 3 plays, 2 yards punt. And then, so as much as that defense is keeping us in, San Fran's offense will eventually score. It's going to happen. And then that's where, after that last punt, San Fran, they had, a decent punt return, Brock Purdy, 1 play on some, they're running some gadget plays, Kittle touchdown. And then it felt good because then Dallas started to figure it out. So in a game where Dallas is down 14-0, it feels like they're getting outplayed. It felt like it could have been worse, right? So
absolutely
after that punt, and it's a pretty decent return by McLeod because they're they're backed up in their red zone. They give up that touchdown, but then the next drive for Dallas go 11 plays, more plays than they've run all game, 78 yards, score a touchdown. So you're feeling good midway through that second quarter. It's getting close to the end. You're down 14-7, a game that isn't out of reach yet. But it really felt like in those key moments, as we see there, Dak taking some sacks when he could have thrown away, trying to do too much. I think that is one of the biggest things we can see from last night. And here's that gadget touchdown to Kittle, which on a double reverse, I guess you're not expecting a pass, but
yeah. And I commented live when this went on. When you run a gadget play like that, it's just because you feel in control of the game.
Yeah,
like that, because that can blow up very easily and be a momentum shifter. But they're like, you know what? The ball's been on our side of the field. We got kind of nothing to lose. We're in control. They're not moving the ball. You run the gadget play, and that was just, to me, the coach is saying like, oh, we have them on their heels.
Yeah, and it felt like at that point, it really felt like because Dallas hadn't been able to move the ball. You really felt, okay, it's just going to be, it might be one of those days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we're seeing here, this is that next drive where, Dak and the offense started to put it together. The one thing I noticed, and I mentioned it during while we were watching, he seemed to get 100% away from the run game. I think in the first half, there was only 7 rushing attempts, and one of them was with Dak, I think. And Pollard only had 4 rushing attempts. So they seem very unbalanced. There we see that play from Turpin, that great pass. One, it felt like they just threw it, go to the spot. I'm going to put it in a spot, and you got to run under it.
Best play of the game, really, for Dak and the offense.
Oh, yeah. Great pass. Put it where it needed to be. Put it on the outside when they had that safety deep. It was a beautiful ball. So it's one of those things, and now you're at the point where, okay, we got 7 minutes left. We're going into, before half. You make a stop and score a touchdown. It's 100% different game. It really felt like that was a momentum shifter, and you thought maybe something was going to happen after that touchdown.
What was big to me on this play was Turpin. They found a way to get him involved. He used his speed. This out route was like a staple of Amari Cooper-esque type of route. So for Turpin to come in and make that catch, it's over the shoulder catch. He's falling down and he's like moving his feet to stay in bounds. It's like a super athletic play. And, we didn't talk about it, but he did end up getting hurt when he was tackled, I think, on a punt return and was unable to get back into the game. But so, who knows if we had more gadget plays. Based on how the night went, we probably didn't. But if you're trying to think positive, maybe we had some things for Turpin to come in and do some things, but we couldn't take advantage of that. But you're right. So we score a touchdown, 1 possession game, and the Niners come back out. But really, Purdy was just kind of was comfortable all night long.
And it really felt like, and as we're seeing in a lot of these clips, it really felt like a lot of guys he was throwing to. It's not like San Fran was making the contested catches and just bullying us. I don't know what Dan Quinn's thought was. I don't know what defense, I don't know what they prepped for this week. I guess it seems like they just 100% prepared for Christian McCaffrey and disregarded everyone else, because it felt like Purdy had a lot of time in that pocket, and it felt like everybody he threw the ball to was, had like 2 yards of separation, if not more. There was a lot of times we saw the Kittle touchdowns where he's wide open. The use check play action, I get it at the end zone. But as much as they shut down McCaffrey, we see here he had that touchdown, which I think to me is a huge momentum shifter. Because if you could just pause it there, we drove down, you're down 14-0, right? You drive down the field and you get that score with 7 minutes left, and you're feeling good about yourself. So it's a 14-7 game. You get a stop, you can come back and you can, tie the game going into half. 14-14 is much different, right? So right after Dallas scores, San Fran goes back and scores, right? And it felt deflating. But even with that, Dallas still had an opportunity. There's still 2 minutes left. You put together a 2-minute drive, you go into half 21-14, and now you get the ball in the second half. The issue was right after San Fran made 21-7, Dallas went 3 plays, 8 yards out. So now you're like, I was a little nervous. I kind of was like, let's try to run it. I don't want to give San Fran an opportunity. But when you look at the plays, like in the first half, it's 3 yards, or 3 plays, 1 play, 3 plays, 11 play, 3 plays, and then your 2 plays because you're at the end of the half. So going into halftime at 21-7, you're down. It just felt like one of those games that you weren't going to win. I think throughout the game we were optimistic about it, because if Dallas comes out in the half, scores 21-7, different game. To me, it just felt like Dak couldn't command this team, and it didn't feel like Dak was getting pressure all night. I know he was sacked a few times, but I felt like a lot of that was at the end. His 3 interceptions that came in, when he tried to do too much. I think that's what it was. Dak's trying to do too much. Some of the sacks were unnecessary. He could have thrown the ball away. And he didn't seem to command that offense at all in that first half. And I know you've been a big Dak guy. Does this game change your opinion? After watching that full game, your thoughts change? Do you feel a little bit like he may not be the guy that can lead this team to a Super Bowl? Or are you taking it one game, ugly game, is bad, really bad, super ugly, we're gonna scrap that?
Yeah, you can't put to me, this was more of a coaching lack of creativity, more so than it falls on the quarterback. I mean, when this type of defense, when you got Fred Warner wreaking havoc, we have 0 run game, so they basically know that we're passing the ball, and they have a mean pass rush. I mean, you have to. I mean, if you're Dak and 3 seconds, 2.5, 3 seconds into your drop back, man, if your first read's not there, you're ready to check it down because you basically have Bosa coming down your throat. So for me, it was like unable to run the ball effectively, and falling behind. Those were the 2 recipes. And I think so far, this was the best offensive line that our defense has gone up against. And you see and we kind of saw it last year with the Eagles as well, when you have a top ranking offensive line, we're just not going to be able to get as much pressure on the QB, let's call it what it is, as other teams where we're on top of the quarterback, 40% of the time, or whatever the case may be, they're under duress. Purdy, and we're going to see it with Hurts as well. he's going to have time in the pocket. And our cornerbacks are, whether we're playing man-to-man, whether we have a zone scheme coming up, Dan Quinn's going to have to get creative, zone blitzes. He's going to have to switch things up.
See, to me, you're like, I get they put up a lot of points. At what point, to me, if I'm a defense and my offense, like, I get you have to play great defense, and we've seen defenses shut teams out.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm on that defense, right? If I'm Micah Parsons, Diggs, I guess he's hurt, but Gilmore, Leighton, Tank, I'm kind of upset right now. This was our primetime game, and I know, the first half you're down 21-7. One of those touchdowns was, and it could have been worse, but they, Dallas had to punt the ball. They got it at the 38-yard line. So one of their touchdowns was in plus territory. They only had to go. I get it was one play. You're thinking about it, the gadget play, but really they only drove down twice on Dallas in that first half, on that Dallas defense. So they shut. I feel like, to me, I'm not going to put blame on that defense. Dak we had 4 turnovers. We were -3 in the turnover category, which you can't happen against this type of team. And Dak just didn't look good. And to me, I've said it, each of the lives, been saying it since we started this podcast. For the last few years, I just don't believe Dak is a big game quarterback. And there was plays where you're watching, you're just like, why did you do that? Why are you making that throw? So it was really upsetting to see. And I'm not going to be as upset with Dak. I think the San Francisco team is a juggernaut. They're going to be tough to beat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because as we saw last night, they didn't really use Ayuk. He had some plays, but he had 4 catches, 58, right? So he didn't really kill you, D, but they have so many. They completed 18 passes, 3 to Kittle, 4 to Ayuk, 4 to Samuel, 2 to McCaffrey, 4 to Juszczyk. So it's, while Quinn said he planned for McCaffrey, and that's what my nervousness and my fear was coming into this game. They have so many weapons that if you put it all on one, or we're going to stop the run. Kittle hasn't done it. People forget about how great Kittle is because they don't need to use him. He can stay in and be a run blocker for that team, because you have Debo, you have Ayuk, Juszczyk come out of the backfield. So it definitely hurt last night's loss. To me, it showed what we lack, and I don't know. To me, I don't know what you can fix at this point, because to me, it's the quarterback. It's not so much anything on that defense. We could use a receiver. They could use a super. Like, I know CD is our guy, but the last 2 games, he's really 4 catches for 49 yards yesterday. And most of that was late, or later in the game. The week before, I think he had 1 or 2 catches. We need a guy that when he's getting doubled, we got to get him the ball. And I don't know if it's a Dak thing. I don't know if it's a McCarthy saying, with the way he's play calling, it's not getting CD the ball. But in a game like that, CD should have had 10 catches and let him go make his plays. So to me, like, if any great quarterback is going to get their guy the ball, Dak should have been force feeding CD the ball last night. And I get there was plays where he's being double covered, but this guy's one of the best receivers in the league. You got to trust him to go make his plays.
They did a great job at neutralizing CD. They basically jammed him at the line with Ward. He really couldn't get much separation at all because of that, threw timing off. You saw how frustrated he was throughout the game. They kept panning to CD while our defense was out there. I mean, you can't, 4 turnovers. That's generally how we win games and how we win them big. So you can't turn the ball over, period. Now, going into this game, we were kind of top in the NFL when it came to first downs. So that gave me some confidence that we were going to be able to move the ball. You did see kind of Arizona move the ball on the Niners well. So I feel like the 49ers kind of went to our last match against in the playoffs last year and said, okay, this is how they like to play us, and we're going to take some things away. And I feel like the Cowboys did the same thing, but the 49ers just wouldn't have it. It's like the Niners knew our game plan basically, because they knew how to slow us down. Where are our 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets? Like, let's make a point. If we want to come and run the ball, let's go heavy set and just see what we can do on the pound and ground. You just kind of set up Dak for failure when you're going to ask him to throw it. How many times did he throw it? Like 38 times.
It was a lot. Yeah, let me see. I'm in there. He threw it. Well, he only threw it 24 times.
Okay, well, that's probably
because a lot of 3 and outs.
We had very few possessions.
But when you look at the plays, like, to me, your quarterback has to make plays to win games. At the end of the day, your quarterback has to make a few plays. And the few times where he had the opportunity to, like, there was the play with Gallup, was one-on-one coverage, and he's throwing it out of bounds, and the big play with Cooks, I think that was the end of or close. I think that was the first half, right? The end, where he had Cooks wide open because for some reason San Fran had Fred Warner playing him, and Cooks. Yes, Warner is all-world linebacker. He's not keeping up with Brandon Cooks, and it showed. And Dak, and he threw it a little too much, and it's out of bounds. If he throws it up the field more, that's a touchdown to Cooks. So even the plays where we had the opportunities to, Dak still, and we've said it all year, he's not giving these guys the opportunity to go play the ball in the air. The few times he did throw it up to Gallup, it was out of bounds. And the other times with Cook, he threw it out of bounds for Cook. So there's an issue. He's not letting his guys go make plays. And the one time he did keep it in the field, I don't know if he didn't see the safety or what. At the end of the game, it didn't matter. But when he threw it up and threw that late interception, did a safety, I'm okay. You're losing. I'm okay with that one. You already lost. But the other ones where the games was close and he had the opportunity and he's still not letting his receivers go make a play, that's an issue. Like I said it last night, and we were over a friend's house who's a 49ers fan, and he said, well, I was like, well, the 71% completion percentage is misleading. And he's like, what do you mean? And he makes a lot of the checkdowns to bolster that up. And I get, like, he's doing a lot. His deep ball this year, in other years, he was letting his guys go make plays. And he's had over, high 7s, low 8s throughout his career. I think his average is, 7.6 yards per attempt. This year it's under 7. And those deep balls just aren't so I don't know if it's something with him, if he's not trusting these guys, but there's a major issue with this receiving core. And we said it last year, they had the lowest yards per separation in the NFL with receivers. So there's something that he's not trusting in these guys to let them go make a play, where he seems to be, I don't know if he's intentionally throwing it more towards the sideline out of bounds to not give it up. Maybe he's gun shy after last year. So a lot of these things are coming into play, especially when I see a game like yesterday where it was close enough throughout the game where those plays could have made a big difference, and he's not letting his guys go make one.
Yes, I was. So, yeah, I mean, some criticism that I will definitely throw on Dak, and I was very optimistic coming into this year. He's 30 years old. A couple other veteran quarterbacks at 30 years old started to make, show a lot more maturity, a lot of pre-snap audibles. And I've been expecting to see that. Really none of that last night. So I'm like, either are we not getting the play call in, early enough, not enough motion. Like, Dak, I expect you to go out there and see what's being presented and make adjustments. And I really didn't see any of that last night. So I don't know if he was handcuffed with the coaches. They were just, convicted about their strategy and sticking with it, which I couldn't even tell you what that was. It was just an overall ugly performance. It's the first time that I missed Kellen Moore.
I was just going to bring that up to you. That was going to be my next point. I was thinking, how much of it do you think he is switching to this quote unquote Texas coast offense? Not, maybe not trusting and how much of it is, Kellen's been there a long time. He was there. And Dak's, I get the interceptions weren't there besides yesterday. But everything else really seemed down offensively for Dak. How much of it do you think they miss Kellen Moore now? Like, because he's the guy, he's the guy that's him and Dak were, I felt Dak was calling it, or Kellen was calling a beautiful play for Dak most of the time. It really feels like he is missing them a lot now.
Yeah, it does look like that. So it's like, what do you do? I mean, now part of me is like, okay, it's hard not to, we talked about going into the season, it's NFC championship game or bust. After a game and a performance like that against the number one ranked NFL team, your mind starts running, and I'm already thinking, okay, what are we going to do after McCarthy? If by week 8 we just find ourselves out of it, because we have a pretty tough schedule still. Yeah. We have the Chargers to worry about next, who Kellen Moore has a lot of familiarity with our team, and they just saw kind of how the 49ers were, what they did to neutralize CD Lamb, basically. And I wanted to say, in your point around separation in our receiving core, Amari Cooper was our deep threat. And the Cowboys are, based on what I've observed, are trying to use Gallup as our deep threat. But we really need to give CD an opportunity to be our deep threat, because he's supposed to be our number one. If you're a number one guy and you want the top 3 paid contract in the league, you have to be able to do what Justin Jefferson does and Jamar Chase. Now, and we just haven't given CD that opportunity. Third, when it comes to second, when it comes to receiving core, Brandon Cooks, when we brought him in, 1,000-yard receiver. Yeah. If he doesn't hit 1,000 yards this year, Mike McCarthy deserves to be fired. If you can't find a way to get Cooks more involved in this offense, that's a huge problem. And so if McCarthy goes, DQ deserves an opportunity to be head coach, but I don't think there's a way we can get Kellen Moore back as an offensive coordinator.
Well, no, he wouldn't come back. No, I don't think that would happen at all.
No, he'd have to be offered the head coaching position.
So you just mentioned, firing McCarthy possibly. When you look this week, going in, how do you think, what is Jerry going to do to because we know Jerry's a very much fly from the cuff type of dude. If he doesn't like it, he's got no qualms with making changes. He will do that in a heartbeat. How do you think he really addresses now? I'm not talking about publicly, because I think publicly he'll probably still stand by McCarthy. But do you think internally there's some question marks, especially like you said, we got rid of Kellen. I felt that getting rid of Kellen, I've said it multiple times, getting rid of Kellen Moore is that was a play for McCarthy, to give McCarthy his opportunity, because McCarthy really wasn't the play caller. And before you fire a coach like that, let him cook the food, right? He's going to buy the groceries and cook the food. So yeah, to use the Bill Parcells quote. But do you think he is now pretty much on that hot seat? Because I thought he was before. I really thought after this season he's getting fired regardless, unless they make that NFC Championship game. I thought he was out. Do you think this loss right here solidifies it? And it could happen earlier. If we get another bad loss to Philly, could it happen during the season?
Yeah, if we find ourselves at 4 losses by Thanksgiving, I think
which is possible.
It is possible. We will have at least, I think, 1 game before Thanksgiving against the Eagles.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that we're going to have to sweep the Eagles if we really want to turn around the season. And I think the likelihood of that at this point is that 0. We're probably going to get swept. That's probably that is the more likely outcome. But how does he address the coaches? I mean, he's talking, the focus is on McCarthy. Like, what happened? We look like crap out there. And if you really want to get under Jerry Jones' skin, you perform like this on a big stage. And he sees what product we're putting out there for the fans, for the media. Now, the thing for Jerry is whether, however people are talking about the Cowboys, as long as they're talking about them, he's making money. So he, to a fault, he's been very loyal to his coaching staff. So look, Mike McCarthy, he's going to be on a very short leash. DQ is going to say, like, we have our defense out there, however many times in the first half. It's hard. It's going to be hard to contain that San Francisco high-powered offense for that long.
Especially when you're going 3 and like that defense had to feel like, I know there was some, early in that first half, they were stopping them some, they were shutting their drive. But man, when you're just going 3 and out every drive and you have 10 drives, that game, I think were 4 plays or less. And then, I don't know how many drives actually went over 20 yards. That defense, like that's where I understand the defense gave up some points and they did not look great at all. But I kind of do give them a little bit of a pass because they were on the field so much. Like you're having to, and against a team where it can do so many things against you. I was optimistic. Like I don't take as bad as much from that defensive performance as I do from the offensive performance, but I agree with you.
Yeah. So, McCarthy's going to get grilled. Unfortunately, we can't mope, as tempting as it is. We can't mope about this loss. Now we did say, hey, if we lose, the good thing about having this game in week 5 is if we have to make a blockbuster trade, we have draft capital. We can look to bring a veteran in that's maybe on his last year and just try to make a run. With Vander Esch out with a neck injury, Bland walked off the field injured. The injury
Biotish got injured a little bit. He was hurt yesterday.
Biotish got injured. I mean, we threw all of our offensive line starters out there, which was the first time since 2021, I believe the stat was, that they've all been together. So we kind of threw everything we had at them, and the injury bug hit our defense. I didn't see any update or what happened with Bland, but if he in fact is out, we're likely going to have to bring someone else in. If Vander Esch is going to be out for several weeks, we don't have a lot of depth. That is our weakest position on the defense, our linebacking room, unfortunately. As much as, I like Clark, we're going to have to bring a veteran in. Now, White from Tampa Bay comes to mind, but I just don't know where he is in his contract and how much time he has left. But I think that would be a good acquisition. But, the Buccaneers are kind of making a run for themselves. So they might not be motivated to make a move. Surtain with the Broncos.
I don't know if they get rid of. He's too young.
They're going into a rebuild
but
year.
He's a guy. I think he's only in his second year, so I don't think he's a guy that they would move. Because he's so young with that team. Like, I think he's a guy they may try to keep around to build that defense around.
I would be okay giving a first round for Surtain.
Oh, I would 100% because he's that type of corner. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not going to pay him. It's just a 1 to 2 year fix, and then we're just going to let him get paid somewhere else because we already paid Diggs. But if you really think and you have the conviction and you're Jerry Jones, like, no, this year has to be the year. And also, I need to know if I'm going to extend Dak. You have to do what you got to do. We're talking about our defense, who going into this game was our strongest unit. But now it's like, it feels like we have to bandage it up. So look, the biggest positive here is we're in week 5. All right. We're not in December. So a lot of things can happen. The 49ers, they still have to be healthy. The injury bug has also touched the Eagles more so on their defense, but their strength of schedule hasn't really turned the corner yet. Now they are going to play the Jets, who seem to be building momentum. Zach Wilson does look better week over week. He looks a lot better now than what he did with the Cowboys. I'm not saying the
Okay,
Jets are
just
going to
making
upset.
sure.
No,
He's just
I'm not
making
saying.
sure. That's all I wanted to hear.
I'm not calling an upset, but I wouldn't be all that surprised if it's a ends in a one possession type of score. So yeah, I mean McCarthy's on the hot seat. Yeah, and I call that. I predict if we have 4 losses by Thanksgiving, he will be let go. Which in a lot of cases, when a coach leaves, the locker room it builds a spark for the locker room. So for whatever that's worth.
When I look at it too, you see a team like San Fran last year. They were struggling. A team that everybody thought was a top tier team. They did struggle. They made that one trade for McCaffrey and things took off. So I'm not saying the same thing will happen for Dallas because I think the depth, everybody knew San Fran was a Super Bowl caliber team. They just needed a quarterback. After watching last night, I think there's some moves to be had. I don't know if any of those moves make us any closer. Because I still think Dallas is they're more than just a quarterback away. I don't think Dak is a guy that can take them there. I think Dak is a guy with if he has great pieces around him, sure. But against teams where he has to go make the play, I don't think he can do it. And I just don't know what you go get at this point. After watching last night, it really feels like you probably are going to need an offensive lineman at some point because I'm assuming more injuries are going to hit. Losing Van Der Esch with his neck, it does stink, but you don't know how the kid's had 3 or 4 neck injuries now. You don't know, and you feel bad because he's a good kid. You don't know how effective he can be coming back especially for the length of the contract, and you don't want him to put his health at risk. You really don't want him to come out, unless it's something where he's 100% going to be okay, because it looked bad when he ran into Parsons. It did not look good, and he was down for a little bit of time.
Pushed into Parsons by
he
Williams.
I did thought that play was a push in the back too.
Yeah. And we shouldn't let the coaches off the hook because there were also some defensive penalties that kept drives going for the 49ers.
They look the last few weeks, they just look the games they're losing, those are the games where they're getting really undisciplined too.
And it's the defense. So my finger points at DQ, not so much McCarthy. I mean, is it offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator?
No, you're head coach. To me, it starts with I get offensive, but he's head coach. It goes to head coach down. So if you have an undisciplined defensive coordinator and he's not like that, to me, it goes on your head coach. But I agree with you. There were some terrible plays, and also they're not as talented as San Fran. And I try, to me, that's why my prediction for McCaffrey didn't come true. I didn't do what I thought, but when you look at it, they're not as talented. They don't have the weapons. San Fran can beat you so many different ways. So I don't know what moves can be had here, what they can go get to close that gap. It's not like you haven't lost and just got blown out by San Fran. I could wash it up as a bad week. And in terms of how I think the coaches address it, I think a lot of people, listen, bad week, let's move on. But you looked kind of really bad against an Arizona team that you shouldn't have lost to, and now against the competition that we said we thought it was Dallas, San Fran, and Eagles. I think you have to take Dallas out of that conversation now. 100%. Dallas is not in that conversation. It's San Fran and Eagles in a class of their own. While the Eagles don't look like San Fran does, they're winning. You're 5-0. You take that for what it is. Regardless of your schedule, they're winning the games they're supposed to win. Dallas hasn't been doing that. I don't know if there's any move out there that it makes this team different. I thought coming into this season fully healthy, yes. You lose Diggs. Now you're losing Van Der Esch. We don't know how bad Biotish is hurt. We've seen Martin be beat up this season. Micah's been limping a lot this season. It seems like it's one of those years that is just not going to be good. And you hope come playoff time, you're healthy. I think right now the focus should be, let's maybe make a move. Try to definitely, I would still look at Seattle, try to go get Bobby Wagner. That's my move. I think they need a linebacker. but you got to do something. But I don't know what moves can be had that can make this team better in terms of making an actual run.
Yeah. So I don't think Seattle's gonna give Wagner away. Is they're in playoff contention themselves, and I think he signed a
Are
multi-year
they?
deal. Yeah, he signed a multi-year deal, and so we're gonna need to pull someone from a team like the Broncos, a team like
Yeah, they are 3-1.
potentially the Jets. We might be able to. I don't know where Mosley is in his contract, but we could potentially look to make a smash, depending on where they are and where their record is, close to the trading deadline. Um, the Vikings. I can't think of their linebacking or their linebacking core right
They
now,
have
but
a ender, Daniil Hunter. I know he's pretty solid. He's a guy they could go get if you're looking for a lineman
mm-hmm,
opposite a tank.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Because you may have to at this point if Van Der Esch is hurt, like it does stink. I know you wanted to keep Micah down.
mm-hmm.
He may be the guy, and it stinks for him because I know he wants to be that defensive lineman, that edge rusher. You may have to get creative now with Micah to move him around to kind of patch this defense until you figure something out.
Yeah, he did line up at the linebacker position at least once. It could have been two or three times, and but so I was kind of thinking about that in our pregame, like maybe we move Micah to linebacker, but having him on McCaffrey, as physical and as quick as he can't match that elusiveness
No,
that McCaffrey has. Really, nobody can. So we're in order. So you said, we're off the rails. It's Niners and it's Eagles, and
100%.
I agree with that because of how things shaked out yesterday, and more so the lack of confidence I have right now in our coaching staff. And in order for us to get back into that conversation, it's going to take a lot of convincing game over game over game. Like the next, 6, 7 games, however many it is, up to Thanksgiving, through Thanksgiving game day. Then if we go on that winning streak, we win Thanksgiving Day, then it's like, okay, we found our mojo. It's going to take that type of performance and like a new portfolio, if you will, of streak of winning games convincingly to come back and say, okay, going into December, now we're back at it. We're back in the top 3. We figured things out. If that doesn't happen, man, I don't even. I'm not going to have really any confidence going in and even making the playoffs. It's like there's a lot of other teams right now that are doing well in our conference.
That's the thing is you got some of them teams that are people didn't really think. I think like Tampa, the New Orleans, those teams people don't forget, and they could definitely make it. When I look at the schedule through the end of November, it's not a tough schedule. I think you get, like we said, San Diego, I'm not sorry, LA Chargers next week. And outside of that, you have the Eagles are the only game that's really tough through the end of November. So while I agree, you need to put together a heater here. If you lose any game outside of that Eagles game, it's a failure. And even if you go through and you sweep every one of those other games and you get blown out by the Eagles, it's a failure. They have to win every one of these games. And I don't care how you win it. You got to win every game except the Eagles. Because to me, I think that first Eagles game in Philly, I already said loss because it's in Philly. I switched them too. But you can't get blown out. It's got to be a good game. But, not looking too far ahead, we'll finish up with this. Biggest takeaway from yesterday. What is your number one takeaway that something needs to happen, or biggest takeaway from the game last night?
Biggest takeaway is that the Heat went from like a 2 to a 9 on McCarthy. His hot seat is flaming hot right now, and he's going to get burned if things don't turn around over the next couple games. If we have the exact same performance against the Chargers,
no, he's out 100%. I would think.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I 100% agree with you there. And to me, and I hate to harp on it, and I know there are some people that are fans. My takeaway is Dak's not him. Dak's not the guy that's going to lead this team to the future. And the sad thing is in the NFL, if you don't have you can always look at what if the grass may not be greener on that other side, but you don't know until you try, especially a quarterback, because I just don't know. I've seen enough from Dak to see he's not the guy that's going to lead this team. Because I thought this was a big year, but I do think at the end, I think you could be seeing the end of McCarthy and Dak coming up. I think that and I know it's early. I know it's one game, but it was a big game. It was a huge game. So it's tough to take away. And I think the coaches are going to try to scratch it up as one game, but it has implications. You got to feel, last 2 years you lost to San Fran, get blown out this year by San Fran. It's got to be up in the mental. It's got to be in the mental at this point. So, no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Now, Parsons did say, so Dak said after the game, it was a humbling experience. McCarthy said after the game, they got their butts kicked in all three phases of the game, however you want to put it. And Parsons said in an interview that he still doesn't believe that the gap is that wide between the two teams.
I don't think it's as wide as it was last night. No, I'm going to agree. I'll agree with that. I don't think it's that wide. But I think San Fran exposed Dallas a lot.
Yeah.
And exposed Dak, exposed our receivers. They exposed our cornerbacks. They exposed every facet of this team. So like you said, it's great. It was only week 5. Mm-hmm. It's tough to, I know but this is a team we thought would have 3 or 4 losses total this year. They got 2 in the first 5 weeks. So I think time to start pushing the panic button and start play. I don't know, players only meeting. McCarthy sit down, talk with everybody. Something has to change for this team to really make a run this season.
And so last question for you, because my mind is running and I want to always go to ways to fix it. So let's fast forward. Let's say McCarthy is out. Kellen Moore, I think, is high on the list to bring in. But is there a way Sean Payton is able to untangle himself from the mess that's in Denver?
I don't even want him at this point with what I've seen him in Denver. Like, he was out of the league for so long. I think he attached himself to the perfect situation and the perfect quarterback for him. Let's not forget, he did have one of the all-time greats. And to me, I don't know if I want Dak out there slinging it 50 times. I don't think he's that type of quarterback. So Sean Payton, he showed with Breeze, he's a guy that'll throw that ball a lot. Didn't really utilize the run game a ton in New Orleans. Now you give him Russ, and I think it's more of a Russ issue than a Sean Payton thing. But I don't know if I'm bringing in Sean Payton. I want him to pick his guy. I want him to say, this is the quarterback, go get. That's who I want. I don't think Dak is the guy for a Sean Payton offense to throw it like Breeze did. I really don't. But he'll be okay. But I think you go back, maybe try to kick the tires on Kellen Moore, or you really go, listen, teams, Green Bay, I get they had Rodgers. They went young coach. Miami, you see what, that kid's doing in Miami now. Mm-hmm. When San Fran took the shot on Shanahan, he was McVay in LA. I think they need to go get a young, you see a lot of young genius offensive coordinator, because today's about offense and being innovative. You see the way Miami scores points, and I get they have talent and they went and got, but that's because of what they've done, what they've been able to do with the draft capital, being able to trade, drafting the right guys. Shanahan been able to build that thing. So I think they got to look at one of these young offensive coordinators. And I don't know if Kellen Moore was held back by McCarthy, or by who. I think he was there. I forget who the head coach was before McCarthy. Garrett. I know he was there with Garrett. I don't know if they held him back. Maybe he's the answer and let him come in and innovate some, because it really seems that these top tier offenses are really getting these innovative head coaches and San Fran. not San Fran, Kansas City is winning. I know Andy Reid's an old school head coach, but he's for his life of his, he's been an offensive genius. That's where I think we need to go in that direction and get a guy that can really utilize the talent, because the talent outside, I still think Dak's talented. The talent's there on offense. It just doesn't seem to be getting used the right way. So Peyton may not be the answer, but I think an offensive head coach is the answer going forward.
Now, I do know that the hot seat is also applies to the head coach of the Chargers. So if they end up falling short of the playoffs, they could find themselves in a new search for a head coach. And if they bring in a different offensive minded coach, Kellen Moore might find himself looking for a job as well.
I think they brought in Kellen to actually take over that job. I think, to me, because that kid, like Staley, was young. He was, one of those offensive dudes. So if you bring in another young offensive guy to be your offensive coordinator, I think that's where I don't think they'll be able to get more, because I think if Staley's gone, I think Kellen becomes the head coach of that team.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're not talking about our coaching situation that is more in depth like we are now in the coming weeks.
Agree with you, but yeah, so it's a tough one. I don't think we wanted to go this long, but there was just so much to take in from that game last night. It was just a bad game, and let's hope they scratch it up as just 1 week and they come out this week. I know they have another primetime game against the Chargers. So I hope Dak looks a little bit better. I hope they come out and look a little bit better next week. We'll dive into it Thursday evening. We'll be back with our pregame analysis and kind of break down. I don't know if we'll break down the Dallas game as much because we just did, but we'll break down the matchups and what could possibly happen come Thursday. So we really appreciate you guys for listening, watching on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you guys watch, back on Spotify. So appreciate the downloads on Spotify. And I want to be positive, but it's tough to be positive after last night. So we really appreciate you guys. Keep listening, keep following. Again, follow us on the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter, Cowboys Takeover Podcast. Same on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a subscribe there. Follow us on that side as well. And until Thursday, let's go Cowboys. Let's, as negative as we were today, let's try to keep a level head. Aaron said it many times. It's week 5. So we have a long season left. There's still 15 weeks left. We just live and die with this team. So we appreciate you guys for listening and watching. And till Thursday, go Cowboys.